Hello, everyone, and welcome to the W2 Amigos podcast, where we talk about passive investing, real estate, and all the money moves you can make while working your W2 so you can establish your financial freedom. Here to talk about the W2 journeys, your hosts and amigos, Nick Coulter and Xavier Marin. Nick, what's up, man? How you doing today?
Good, man. We got our first booking done and over with. Second one as well. We got a review for our first one. 5 stars. You know what I mean? So clearly the Wi-Fi password of 5-star stay. Did a little bit of subliminal messaging, dropped it on them. We're hoping for the second to get us back to us because they were great guests and we hooked them up with a bunch of stuff too, like early check-in and shit like that. But it's good, man. Chilling. Just need more bookings to continue to make this thing worth it. What about you?
Sweet. I've been the past week or 2 weeks just consuming a ton of Pace Morby content on YouTube. If you guys don't know him, follow him. He's a subject to guy, creative financing. And I think I'm going to make next year a goal to acquire either a subject to property or create a finance one. So definitely want to make a focus of not using my money anymore to acquire property. We'll see, but I've been loving this content, man.
Yeah, Pace is the only reason I have this house in San Diego. I listened to an episode of his on the Bigger Pockets podcast, and then I was like, dude, why can't I call people about seller financing? So I called this property. It was outside of my price range, but they agreed to do a seller carryback. Turns out I was able to just negotiate the price lower so I could do it all myself, but the seller carryback was an option. That's the only reason I called them. It's the only reason I live here. So thanks, Pace.
Yep. And then today I had a phone call with a broker for a property that just came across my desk. And I asked a question, are they willing to do seller financing? And the answer was yes. So doesn't hurt to ask.
Yeah,
it's
man.
out there.
We got to get creative. Speaking of creative, what are we talking about today?
We are talking about short-term rentals today, Nick. And definitely one topic that I'm very excited to talk through. I know you just got into the short rental game with your property in San Diego. I got into it back in 2021. Been learning a ton, and hopefully we can add a little bit of value to our listeners today.
Yeah. So we definitely wanted to cover it because it is a hot topic. It's short-term and medium-term rentals. That seems to be where all the fire is in the real estate investing community, especially for folks that have jobs, because you can more easily qualify. You guys can go back and listen to the episode from Brad, but you can easily qualify for some of these loans. And then what I also really like about the short-term strategy is you can kind of synergize it, if you will, synergy, and combine it with house hacking, my favorite topic in the world, and then really kind of explode your investing journey. So why would I want to invest in a short-term rental, X?
Well, a few reasons. One, when we talk about financing options, it's pretty much a little bit easier to get into than just a typical investment loan of 20% down. If it's in a vacation market, it doesn't have to be in a vacation market. You can use the second home loan strategy to put 10% down to acquire it. The only thing is you have to make sure it's at least 50 miles away from your primary residence. So you can technically still buy or still get a second home loan in the same state that you live in, as long as it meets that criteria of being 50 miles away.
Yeah, that is, I think, one of the more powerful things from a financing perspective is you have that option. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to do it because of the regulations in San Diego. You have to live in the property as your primary residence. So I couldn't buy a second vacation home and then make it my primary residence. I'd be violating the mortgage clause, and that'd be a foolish way to commit mortgage fraud and go to jail. But that's what I'm actually looking at for our next property that we want to buy. We're looking at somewhere in California, one of the different destinations that's around us. Kind of like those local drivable markets that people are going to be able to get into, even though there might be hurting. Because I think I just heard on the Market podcast, but 9% spending is what we lost in 2008 during the Great Recession on vacation spending. So there was still spending. It was just 9% less. So it's like, all right, well, maybe I can't fly to Florida. Maybe I can just drive up to Big Bear in California or something like that. So that's what we're looking at for that next option.
Yeah. And another reason why folks like to consider the short-term rental route is typically you get more money for that property than you would do a long-term rental, right? So you take a look at long-term rental. Technically, it's more stable, right? You have a tenant in there. Give me your monthly payment. You get your nice monthly cash flow of $200, $300, $400 a month, whatever that may be. Where short-term rental, you can definitely get more money out of that property. However, the downside or just the challenging piece, it's you have a significant amount of turnover, right? Unlike, tenants, sometimes you stay there for 1, 2, 3 years. You're not really turning that property a whole lot. Short-term rental, typically is considered less than 30 days. So you're constantly turning tenants. So it's definitely a little bit more active income to get it rolling. But typically your returns are worth it depending on the property, depending on the market, and what you can do out of it.
Yeah. So based on the research I've done, let's say a long-term rental is going to net you 100% of the total value that you've assessed, right? So for simple math, we'll use $1,000 as a rental. Medium-term rentals are coming in at about 1.5 as the factor. So let's say like $1,500, and then short-term rentals are coming in around 2 times the factor, which would be about $2,000. Now there's a ton of stuff that is dependent on that, because for me in Redlands, California, that equation doesn't really make perfect sense, because my long-term rental is going to get about $2,700, $2,800 from a full house. Doing a medium-term rental, it would be about $4,000. On Airbnb, it would be about $4,100. And the reason why, the demand just isn't there. So where should we look in terms of energizing that cash flow? Like, why do we look, to your point, in those vacation markets that you talked about at the 10% down?
Yeah. So what I'm looking at, or why I look at a vacation market, is I take a look at, primarily what's around the area, right? So are there theme parks? Are there attractions? Are there national parks? Are there things that are going to make people go there regardless of where the climate's at? For example, in the Great Smoky Mountains where I invest, year over year, visitation has continued to increase. Now, when I was running my research on that, I kind of did the outlier for like 2020, because they did see a huge spike between 2020 and 2021 because of COVID. However, when you take a look at previous years, the visitation for that national park was increasing. So I think that's why a lot of people take a look at that. Look, okay, vacation rental markets are typically a lot stronger. However, there's a lot of money to be made in like second or third tier markets, because not a lot of people are thinking about it that way, right? Someone in the podcast says Joshua Tree or Smoky Mountains, then everyone rushes there. But when you take a look at like those second or third tier markets that, you can do short-term, medium rental if the city allows it, take a look at hospitals, universities, anything that requires like young professionals typically are still a great way to take a look at, acquiring a short-term rental for.
Yeah, I was kind of shocked when I was looking at the metro market side of this. Obviously, I chose to buy one in San Diego. One, we wanted to live down here. Two, the market was actually pretty good. And it's pretty good because I looked at, and this could be a tip for listeners, I actually went to the San Diego city website, and then I started to comb through the website and was able to come across a lot of tourism data. So a lot of big cities and also a lot of different counties track this information, because it's very important for them to make decisions as a city government. I was able to see that the hotel occupancy in 2019, I think it was like 72%, something like that for San Diego. And then it continued to scale up after the 2020 slowdown with everything being shut down. And then there's a section in there for the short-term rentals, and it had the occupancy rates there for the entire city of San Diego. I think we averaged something around like 68% in 2019. So that's where I ran my numbers off based on that and how much the home that I was buying would do in 2019, not necessarily 2020 or 2021, because all the hotels were not an option. People didn't feel safe, so it exploded. So I'd say that's a tip for folks, is find a market that works. Another place that does really well is, to X's point, the colleges and the hospitals, because there's a ton of travelers pouring into those areas. So if anything, you want a travel destination, whether it be for one reason or another, I really do like metro markets if you can buy right, because you can get around the regulations, and then you can make sure that you're also putting yourself in a position to have multiple exit strategies. We could rent this house out on Furnish Finders to 4 different travel nurses or whatever, and we would make not all what we made on the short-term rental, but enough to keep us afloat in case times got hard.
Yeah. And, another reason why I personally looked at a vacation rental area or vacation area is because typically the laws are supportive of short-term rentals there, because their economy thrives on visitation or tourism. So whenever you're in a market that thrives based off that, the likelihood of the city changing the ordinance so where you can no longer own short-term rentals is very, very low. As to where you invest in the market, not to pick on on San Diego, but invest in a market like San Diego, right? Yes, they have a lot of tourism, but they don't rely purely off of that, right? San Diego is still a great place to visit, and people love to live there. So it definitely looks a lot different in each market. So do your research, take a look at the laws and requirements. If you need licenses, what the permits look like, because definitely you don't want to acquire something that you can't technically, use a short-term rental strategy. You think they're not going to find out or that you're going to get away with it, but trust me, it always comes up some way or another. All it takes is just that one neighbor that sees people coming inside and out that know, like, hey, this person's running an illegal short-term rental.
Yeah, and I couldn't agree more with you, man. Like, the reason I picked San Diego too, and I wanted to go inside the city, there's a lot more to regulations than just like you have to have a permit or not, right? So in San Diego specifically, if you live in your home as part of a home share, so a duplex, triplex, or quad, you get a permit immediately because it's your primary residence. And they're trying to encourage people to do this to provide their primary residence if they're living there. And it's like 20 days or less is the whole home, or if you're in a home share 100% of the time. And then that's like immediate license. So we get a license for free. But here's the thing. There are 13,000 short-term rentals, according to the data that I was able to pull in San Diego. It's going to be limited to 1% of the housing supply in the city outside of Mission Beach. That's going to cut this down to 6,500 rentals. So our goal is to hopefully see a benefit because this is going to get slashed by 50%. We're going to see either occupancy go up really high or average daily rate go up really high. So just make sure, to X's point, you're doing your due diligence, because if you do not abide by the rules, you're going to get screwed. And then you're going to have a property that you probably purchased on a pro forma at 2x what you're going to get at 1.5. So then does the property check out, and does it continue to cash flow the way you need to? Likely not, if you were kind of half-assing your underwriting and not looking to the regulations. So make sure you do that. Kind of transitioning over to the X, what are some of the benefits that you've seen on the picking your market side? So you said you went in for those vacation rentals. How does that work? What's the seasonality like? Because obviously San Diego, you can travel anytime. It's 72 degrees all the year long. In case you want to move here, hit me up. But yeah, what's the deal with the vacation markets? Do you see up and down? Do you see a consistent flow? What's that like?
Yeah, I would say in the market that I'm in, they're higher seasons, lower seasons. Typically around the springtime, things start to pick up a little bit more. And I would say after the holidays, like after Christmas and New Year, things start to die down quite a bit. So the Smoky Mountains is a great spot, especially for the spring and the fall, because it's just gorgeous. A lot of mountains, the foliage is great. So when I'm taking a look at my numbers, I'm taking a look at essentially what is the season's going to like, what are the high seasons going to bring me, and making sure that I'm able to cover the lower season. So January, February, maybe even March, typically you have your lowest amount of rental income coming in. However, for the rest of the year, it's pretty solid. So as long as you have some CapEx reserve to be able to making sure you pay the mortgage if you don't get enough bookings throughout those first 3 months, you're going to end up being fine. And typically I'm very, very anal when it pertains to CapEx and how much money we have in reserve. So we have not run into the problem yet where we had to pay out of pocket to cover our mortgage payment.
Yeah, and I think you got to be really disciplined. So what I would say is, when running deals like that to the listeners, look at it on an annual basis. Run it from July to July. Don't run it from March to September and think, oh my God, the whole year is going to look like this. Run the full year, do your analysis and underwriting to that level, and then keep honest and good books to make sure you are seeing, okay, I made $5,000 this month. My mortgage is $2,500. However, I know based on my trends in January, I'm only going to get $1,500 in. So I need to make sure that I'm setting aside the money necessary to go ahead and, pay for that mortgage when the time comes up. Often I hear short-term rental investors, they get 2 or 3, they buy it in the peak of the travel time in their cities they're buying in, and they're getting like $7,000 or $8,000 positive cash flow, and they do something dumb like quit their job or spend it all on something dumb, even worse. And then now they have no reserves piled up for when things are going to hit the road, and that's going to happen, especially in slower season. We're feeling it right now in our Airbnb. And all the numbers say we should be grossing like $13,000 a month, and it's the coldest time it is in San Diego, and we're brand new bookings, so we're going to have less revenue. So we luckily budgeted for that. We're going to be fine. But that's what I would say is caution to all the listeners. Make sure you're running your numbers on an annual basis and be freaking responsible with the money coming in. Like X said, build up your CapEx.
Be responsible, and then also don't lie to yourself. Don't fudge the numbers. Don't be like, you know what, it's going to be 80% occupancy. I think we should be able to hit it. Like, if the data doesn't support 80% occupancy, don't even go that route, right? Go more conservative. Go lower. The other piece I was going to add, Nick, is when I first acquired my first short-term rental, by month 3, my partner and I cash flowed $4,000 in the month of October 2021. And we're just like, what? This is amazing. You know what we did? We put it.
I was gonna say you didn't buy a bunch of shit. I know that.
I didn't buy a bunch of shit. We put that all in CapEx. We didn't pay ourselves out. One, we didn't need the money. We didn't need to pay ourselves out. And then 2, we heard a lot about the lower seasons. We personally hadn't experienced it yet. Mm-hmm. So for us, we're just going to be on the safer side, not take any money out for that month, and let's see how it goes. Now, it played out where we still were able to cover our mortgage for January, February, and March, which was great. So then eventually we were able to pay ourselves up a little bit more. But yeah, definitely be mindful to your point of how much money you're truly paying yourself out, because you can have a month where you can crush it. Then the next month, you're either breaking even or losing money. So why put yourself in a position where you're going to go ahead and max out one month over the other? You just got to be smart about it.
Yeah, I think a lot of people want to get into short-term rentals because it's like sexy and there's a lot of cash flow, which is true. All those things are true. But you have to account that this is going to be a long ride. Nothing in real estate investing, nothing in investing in general, nothing in W-2 wealth creation is going to be quick and overnight. So don't fool yourself into thinking that that's going to be the case. So X, we talked about why you would want to buy a short-term rental. We talked about the financing options of that. We talked about different markets that you could look into, regulations that are stipulated with that. Let's talk a little bit about what I think the listeners need to pay attention to is how much work is managing a short-term rental, and can I do it as a W-2 employee? What are your thoughts?
If you do it right, not that much work. If you don't do it right, it can be a headache for sure, especially if it's out-of-state investing. You can find yourself in a not great position for a few reasons. One, not having cleaners set up, not having maintenance team set up, not having essentially just your overall. People need to take a look at it as a business. You're running a hospitality business, right? So, Nick and I, we both run our Airbnbs. We both manage it while working our W-2s. I'm managing mine as well. I have cleaners. I have maintenance team. I have all my systems set up, which makes things a lot easier. Plus, I have automation in place as well, too, that is able to send automated messages when I get a booking, when it's the first check-in, when's the next morning of checking out. There's a lot of things that are built in that makes running an Airbnb heck of a lot easier. You just have to know how to be able to use those tools, how to build the right team around you to make sure you're successful.
Yeah, so I'd say it's not a lot of work after you get your listing live and it's operating. However, getting ready is a shitload of work. Like I would tell you, like if this place was empty and we bought this house furnished completely and it was already an Airbnb, that was probably like 85% of the work. So I only had 15% to do. I had to like do some minor changes, swap out a table. We had to get the listing live, write all our own cool shit, put in photos, make some upgrades to the backyard because bougie like that. And I still underestimated the 15% work. I gave us a 7-day turnaround time and we needed probably closer to a 21 day. So make sure you're looking at that. If it's out of state and you're buying something that's already turnkey, make sure that it's actually turnkey, and then really make sure you have a good team around you to support you. I've heard of people using their cleaner to help them set up furniture or a handyman to do that, and they just pay them. But I would account like your first 2 months probably are going to be zero income if you're starting an Airbnb as a random single family and you're doing all of the stuff yourself, or God forbid you're doing a rehab and replacing all of the own furniture. Like build that in your numbers. You're not going to close on December 1st and start renting that bad boy out on December 5th. There's just no way that that's going to happen. And if you build that into your numbers, you're going to fail. And those expenses hit hard because the loan doesn't care that you're Airbnb it out or not. It cares that it gets paid. So that's going to be due every single month. Same thing with your utilities and all that kind of stuff. So make sure you budget that and help yourself manage it appropriately. Now, you said X, you have software, you have automation. What are you doing? Like, what are the things that you're using to make your life easier to manage it?
Yeah, so in order to establish my pricing, I use Price Labs for that. So Price Lab essentially takes a look at, just market data and associates my type of cabin. It's a 3-bed, 3-bath, 2-bed, 2-bath, and takes a look at other comps around that area and essentially does dynamic pricing for my nightly rentals. So I use that for pricing. I use Smart B&B, now it's known as Hospitable, for my automated messages as well. So those are the biggest two pieces of automation that I use there to be able to run my Airbnb successfully. And then now I have other apps with my cleaners that I leverage to be able to sync my Airbnb calendar to their app. So whenever I get a booking or a cancellation, whatever that may be, I'm not telling them every time I'm getting a booking. My calendar is syncing with them. They're confirming the booking. Done deal. So those are the three things that I use right now to effectively run my business.
Yeah, so we're the same. So we're doing Price Labs for pricing. What I really like about Price Labs is that you can set your min and max. So you can set not max, but you could be like, all right, so this is the suggested daily rate for a luxury place. We undercut that just a little bit. And then we did the math. So we said, all right, so our mortgage is like $9,800. Let's say we wanted to make $7,500 as the bare minimum at 100% occupancy. That looks at like $290 or $300 a night. So we set that as the going rate, so that we know that we're being as competitive as possible to make sure that we're trying to get people in the house. The second thing is, my wife manages it, but we have a very similar software to UX that we manage. I think it's Guesty for us, but it's all the automated messages. What I love about that is Airbnb specifically will give you like a negative point if you don't respond to guests that are inquiring about your property within the first hour. So you can set up automated messages, X was talking about, check-in instructions, answering to inquiries, and mid-check-ins, check-out instructions. You can do all of this stuff automatically, which saves you a ton of time in communicating back and forth. And then I would say the last thing that we've really liked is actually Turnover B&B. It's the website for Airbnb turnover for cleaning. We bidded it out. We got a bunch of cleaners that hit us back up. We went with not the cheapest one again, but we went with someone that we thought we could trust, that is proven from a rating system to do great work. And we were able to get that committed. And it's funny now, we'll get a check-in, and then our cleaner, almost as fast as we're confirming the check-in and making sure the messages are going out, they're accepting the turnover cleaning for the end of the turnover. And it's gone really well so far. So it hasn't been that much work after the setup, but that setup piece, you W-2 folks, if you're not having someone help you do it, you might need to take a week or two off to get your property set up, because it was a bear and we only had a fraction of work to do.
So there's a few things that I want to bring up, Nick. The first one is, a lot of people take pride of, hey, I acquired my property sight unseen, didn't have to be there. I don't visit them. Okay, cool. I've been there every time I've purchased every single property, because I want to get a feel for it. I want to walk in there. Now, I made offers without even looking at it, right? Or without even being there. However, when I went to go close, I did the walkthrough and I was there. My first cabin, I cleaned everything by hand, all 2,000 square feet of it. Why? There's only so many things that you can see in the inspection report and in your walkthrough. Once I cleaned everything, crap, the faucet's loose because I was wiping on the sink. Crap, we're having an issue with the toilet here because I was cleaning the toilet. So there were things that I was able to find that we were able to get addressed before the bookings went live or before my property went live. Therefore, we wouldn't have that issue. The other piece I would recommend folks is do not skimp out. Don't be cheap. So what do I mean by that? It pays to have quality cleaners. If you have a cleaner that charges more money, but they do a great job, go ahead and go with them. Yes, it costs a little bit more. Typically, your guests are paying for that cost anyways, but you do not want to skimp out on that, and you want to treat your cleaners right because they're going to do right by you. And I had one more and I totally forgot about that. So I'll probably drop it in at some point when we're having that conversation.
You're good. No, I was going to tack on there. Like the cleaner, I think, is your number one support system in the Airbnb because they can do so much for you. They can grab packages, put them where they need to be. They can run your supplies in and out of where your supplies are being held. They can tell you too when guests like screw stuff up, like basically right away before you even have to take any steps or actions with Airbnb. Or any of the whatever platform you're renting your short-term rental on. I would tell you the turnover service that we're using is really nice too, because they also do in-house laundry / out-house laundry. So we pay a little bit more. They take our laundry off-site, they clean everything, bag it, seal it, bring it back, and then it goes into our garage. So it's really just sitting there, but they've done everything. And then they know like, hey, you just need to tell us, hey, someone slept it with makeup on and it ruined your pillowcase. Or someone had, I guess mud butt and ruined one of your towels. Like you need to be able to buy these things again. And we know we have X amount of surplus in there. And so they can just let us know exactly what we need to reorder and what we don't, which is cool because they want to keep their Airbnb successful as well, because the better experience the guest has, the more we're going to get booked. Guess what? The more turnarounds that we're going to have, the more money they're going to be able to make. And the better our relationship, I think, is going to continue to grow.
Yeah, and I absolutely love my cleaners. So they offer a service for the holidays where they go in, they'll go ahead and essentially decorate your entire cabin for you. So one flat fee. So you pay for obviously the materials and labor. They will go ahead, they'll put everything up for you, send your pictures when it's all said and done. After the holidays, put everything down and store it for you for next year. So for me, it's like, this is great service. I absolutely love that. One thing that I want to touch on, Nick, before I forget, from the automation piece that we use. Automation is a great resource in tools, but that's what it is. It's a resource. So what that means is you should always be verifying that things are working correctly. I've seen people get into issues where like, well, I thought automation was set and it should have sent that check-in instructions, or it should have sent that. Just take a look. Verify that everything is working correctly and make sure that everything is scheduled. Even till this day, my cleaners have never missed a cleaning, but guess what? Every time there's a booking, I make sure it's confirmed. And every time there's a cleaning completed, I make sure that it's been completed. Why? I'm just built that way. I'm a little paranoid sometimes, but always make sure that things are working correctly, because technology, sometimes you'll have an issue. There'll be glitches and you might have to send things manually, and that's okay if you catch it on time.
Yeah, I would say too, like it's not for the faint of heart. Like if you're looking for an investment that is completely hands-off passive, I would say buy a long-term rental and be okay making less cash flow, because that's going to be easier. Ideally, if your Airbnb is performing well, you're going to have, let's say 100 turnovers. I think that's like reasonable. It's 2 a week, 52 weeks, that's about 100 turnovers. That means you're going to verify check-in instructions, pre-check-in instructions, checkout instructions, check like mid whatever visit updates, writing reviews. You can do that 100 times. So it's not for the faint of heart, but that's what you get paid for, right? Like the cash flow is so much better, and that's what you're really paying yourself for and doing it. What I would also say is make sure that you're okay with trying to do that while also solving problems. I'll give you an example. I messed up. We went with our first cleaner. We didn't do Airbnb turnover service or B&B turnover, whatever it's called. Instead, I like hooked up with a cleaner that I found on Google. Terrible, terrible thing. Don't do that. Go with someone on the website, because they don't use technology. I had to text them. Hey,
didn't I warn you about that?
Yeah, dude. And then Evelyn fixed it, man. She's a better half. I fucked up. It was a cleaning job for me for like a little bit. So anyway, both cleaners showed up at the same time, and our cleaner from the turnover service comes in from the website and hits up Evelyn. She's like, hey, your guest is still here. It wasn't the guest, dude. It was our cleaner that I didn't tell to come. I told her to come the 25th, not the 28th, but I said we have a checkout the 28th. She just assumed that means we wanted her to show up. So like make sure you're using a cleaner that's got like that automation built in, because that like system is going to be so much better.
Yeah, dude, I've had cleaners that shown up and they're like, hey, your guests are refusing to leave. Like, well, what do you mean? Like, yeah, I'm here. And they're like, yeah, we're not leaving yet. So it's like, oh, okay. So there's going to be things that pop up that you're just going to have to get situated. I think that's one of the benefits of going through, a platform like Airbnb is because you can essentially use that. You can use a support system. You can handle situations and claims, things of that sort. So and plus they provide a layer of insurance and protection as well for both guests and hosts. But you're always going to run into something, right? So don't think it's going to be all set in stone. Forget about it. You'll run into things. I've had, heck, even 2 weeks ago, I had my master toilet just completely bust out and I had to do a whole replacement on it. And I was just like, man, I called the company like, oh, hey, we can go ahead and take care of it in 3 hours for $275. I'm just like, geez, $275. But they said in 3 hours and they have it ready by the next check-in, which was going to be later on that day. I mean, that's a no-brainer, but sometimes you have to be willing to bite the bullet on certain things as well too, and be ready for those situations to pop up.
Yeah. So I wanted to mention this one thing before we kind of wrap up. I was talking with my CPA, which guys we're going to have, X and I, we share a CPA, as we do many things in life, like a podcast, all of our friends, we're very intimately involved. Our CPA is going to jump on the show and he's going to cover a couple things with you guys. But the thing that he let me know is material management of an Airbnb or a short-term rental is the opportunity for you to write off active income on losses on that property, which is super juicy for our W-2 listeners because the W-2 side of your income is active income. If you buy a long-term or a medium-term rental where the stay is, and again, I'm not an accountant, so don't quote me this, please partner with your CPA. If your stay is an average of 7 days or less, you will have the ability to use that as a material activity or management of that property. And then it can write off against your active income. Long-term rentals, medium-term rentals, they don't do that. So if you make a crap load of W-2 money, which hopefully you are, this will allow you to kind of write that off and maybe create yourself a little bit bigger refund at the end of the year. So we'll have our CPA Ben come on and cover that in greater detail, but that is another huge benefit for us that we can do. And all your expenses are deductible on that property because it's an investment property as well. And they also have bonus depreciation. So a couple of really key factors I think you guys should look into when you consider the total wealth creation of real estate investing. This one is more cash flow, more management, but then also way better tax benefits as well.
Yeah, one last piece, Nick, that I was going to add when we talk about analyzing your short-term rental deal. Even if you're self-managing, make sure you include a property management expense on there, because you're probably going to get to a point where, I mean, if you're happy managing your short-term rental, whether it's 1, 10, whatever that may be, that's awesome. If you're someone that eventually wants to hand that off to somebody else and continue to do whatever you want to do, you have to factor in that cost as well, because you want to make sure that your deal makes sense. Because a lot of short-term rental companies out there charge anywhere between 20 to 40%. So what does that mean? So if you are making $100,000 on your Airbnb and you're paying someone 30% to manage it, that's $30,000 a year that's going towards property management. I'm not saying it's not worth it, because a lot of times it all depends on what your goals are. It could be worth it for you, but you have to make sure you take that expense into account when you're running your analysis.
Yeah, I would say too, it's definitely not worth it for me. I don't want to have a bunch of Airbnbs. I want a handful. I want them to be I think Avery Carl says it, cash flow superchargers into your business. That just sounds awful because I don't want to cut anyone else 20 or 30% of my money. I'm way too stingy for that. So I'd say we will only probably have a handful. And what we'll probably do is reinvest the gross amount of income coming in back into probably easier to manage assets. I'm really kind of zeroing in on the medium-term rentals. There's a lot of hospitals in the area around me that I think we could really capitalize on, which I think would be a really cool opportunity. X, how do I find a short-term rental? What's the first step you would take to close this out to buy a short-term rental?
Yeah, I would say first step would be educating yourself a little bit more, right? Either going on Facebook, joining Facebook groups. There's a lot of good resources out there. Bigger Pockets, a lot of great resources out there. Start talking to people that own short-term rentals. I think that's pretty much step one, is to get yourself a little bit more educated on what that means. Step two, I would recommend saying hey, what market would I want to go after, and taking a look at those regulations, right? I think I would start with those first 2 steps. And then from there, you can start figuring things out where, getting a loan or getting an agent first, right? That's probably going to be your first step, is hey, find a nice agent that knows what they're doing in Southern California and San Diego, like Nicholas Coulter. You never know.
Yeah.
Right? So yeah, step one, making sure you're surrounding yourself with people that are already doing it. Step two, choosing your market.
Yeah, and in all seriousness, I would say the book I would suggest to everyone would be The Short-Term Rental, Long-Term Wealth from Avery Carl. I have read that 3 times now. Read it once, kind of got me hooked that, short-term rentals would be what I want to do with my house hack, because you can kind of synergize those together. But then also I read it again when I was like considering putting in offers. And then I read it as we were trying to list the property, because there's a ton of nuggets in there that Avery has. And then I would agree with X. Identify your market, figure out where you want to go, but then get a good agent, guys. I mean, and I don't say this because I want your commission checks. I absolutely do want your commission checks. I absolutely want to help you buy a good investment. I absolutely want to see you succeed in real estate investing while your W-2 supports you. But all that aside, your agent's going to be your number one person. And I'll give an example of that. It's not short-term related. However, I had a previous client hit me up today, give me a phone call, because he was signing leases for his medium-term / long-term rental. And he was like, dude, I don't know how to amend these leases. I needed to go X, Y, and Z and do all this. Well, guess who's done that a million times? Me. So I was able to walk him through all the steps. Calls me back 2 hours later. Cool, I got these 2 leases signed. That's going to allow me to be better covered the mortgage or whatever. So your agent's your number one resource, because they literally benefit from helping you. So make sure that you find a rock star agent in whatever market you're going to purchase in.
Yeah, where I really got started the first time around, like when you kind of mentioned that piece for the book that you recommended, Nick, I started following an individual called Young Retiree 33 on Instagram. His name is Travis. Great guy. I've connected with him, had phone calls before in the past. He originally wrote an ebook that I believe he still has on the market right now. I bought it. I read it. I learned pretty much the majority of myself from Airbnb through him. Hopefully we can have him on the podcast one day. So we'll give him a shout out. If I can leave folks with 3 things from this episode that you can take away. 1, be realistic with the numbers that you're looking up, right? Be honest with your analysis, because if not, you're going to set yourself up in a very difficult position if you're not being honest. 2 is going to be, do not be cheap. Do not try to nickel and dime, the furnishings, whatever that may be. Like, spend the money, get good quality stuff so you don't have to continue to replace things over and over again. We've all rented a car before. We treat a rental car a little bit different from when we choose our personal cars, don't we? Same thing would be applying to the Airbnbs, right? And then last piece, I would definitely recommend you thinking about and not forgetting, it's a business. It's a hospitality business. If you don't go into it with that in mind of being a great hospitality host, then don't do it, right? Because at the end of the day, the reviews are your bloodline to your business. If you don't have great reviews, your business essentially is going to end up tanking.
Absolutely. All right, folks, we are your W2 Amigos. If you would like to interact with us more, please reach out to us on social media, on Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube. We are the W2 Amigos. If you can do us a huge favor, we would greatly appreciate it. Share this episode with a friend or a family member, and then leave us an honest rating and review. We're closing in on 1,000 listens and downloads. We may have already hit that by the time this releases, and we're just really wanting to shout out all the support that we've gotten and just continue to drive that, because it seems like we talk to a lot of people and they're all just eating up the message that we're trying to get out there, that you don't need to quit your W-2 and you can put yourself in a financial position of strength to win in life, which we want to provide as many people as possible. If you want to reach out to me, my name is Nick Coulter. I am at Instagram and TikTok at The5Family, The5Family. And if you want to purchase a house in Southern California, I know a guy. Or honestly, if you're interested in any investment markets, please reach out to me. I want to help as many people as I can get involved in investments wherever they possibly desire. And X, what about you, man? Where can our listeners see your beautiful face more often?
Well, one, our YouTube, if you guys tune in for that. The second place would be Instagram and TikTok at XavierMarin_. And Nick, it might be appropriate to just mention this on the podcast. You talked about downloads, so we're just shy of 1,000. So Nick and I are currently in the process of figuring out what is the right number to set to where we're going to get matching tattoos that say W2 Amigos. We're trying to figure out, is it 10,000? Is it 5? Like, we don't know. But I think we're both on board with saying if we hit a certain amount, we're for sure going to get matching tattoos. Where? Don't know yet. How much? Don't know yet. But,
how big?
How big? My girlfriend already told me just somewhere where she can really just can't see it. So that kind of limits some areas.
Hey, she's jealous, huh?
But no, thank you guys for continuing the support, and we will talk to you soon.